Okay, so we're a conceptual TV show, and who do we imagine our audience is? Well, we are a show for intellectuals. We want to be a variety art show for intellectuals, so that we're more fun than the usual seminar, the usual salon. And we imagine our audience might be intellectuals, adventurers, MFA students, readers, serious readers, which is becoming a skill in our society, like being fluent in another language or playing a musical instrument. We think that we want scientists, we want gay people, we want people who are considered strange to themselves or others. We think that would work for our audience. We imagine ourselves also being comfortable with people who seek experience, people who want improvisation, psychiatrists, healers, dilettantes, criminals, psychotics, people with bipolar delusions. I mean, all of that sort of thing actually does coalesce for our show. And this is our format. We start the show always with a poem, one of my poems, done with Dr. G, and then eventually we will introduce our panelists. That's right, who will be reading and talking about Sylvia Plath. And then we will have a break during which you can do whatever it is people do during breaks. And we hope one thing you'll do...
Kate Braverman or Kate Moses' book would be the start.
And then, really, that's the best I can do with it. Abby's going to tell me when we're halfway through, then we're going to have a break, and then you papers and pencils should be out for the Q&A. We welcome your Q&A. All right, Dr. G, hit it. The show is starting. Let's get it on. I'd like to introduce our panelists for tonight. We have Provost from UC Santa Cruz, Michah Perks. Would you come on up? Up through the screen. And we have my neighbor and friend, the author of the wonderful Plath book, Wintering, Kate Moses. Come on up. Through the glass, interactive. Dr. G will now fix the mics. As you know,
Yeah.
we're reality TV and we don't have the crew we'd like.
You don't need no stinking crew.
Yeah. And it is still not, Plath is still really not in the canon. Is that true?
Yeah.
Provost Perks, is that true?
You know, interestingly, because I knew that since I was coming here tonight, I searched UCSC, University of California, Santa Cruz, for Sylvia Plath. And the only places I found her were on young female college students' personal websites. She's not being taught, actually, in the university at all.
I keep saying, I do keep saying that she is still exiled from the canon 50 years after her death for work that we heard that critics are still, if you want to call someone like Anthony Lane a critic, I mean, we have to call him something.
Oh, oh, that's so harsh.
Well served.
You know, let him do movies, okay? But, you know, how is it that women's emotion could be that threatening to the status quo? Is that the question?
Well, yeah. Why do you think she's not in the canon? Why do you think she's not taught?
I would like to ask you two, who are experts in this, why you think. I had to cancel my New Yorker subscription 3 years ago when that review, the Anthony Lane review of the Collected Lowell, called Sylvia Plath the most vicious lines ever written.
Well,
and everyone can tell you that Sylvia Plath committed suicide and left 2 children, but no one can quote a single stanza of her work. And she is still not in the canon, so I guess what I want to do is talk about the greatness of her writing. What makes that poem great? I know, but you are my panelist. What do you know?
I think one of the things that makes her, when Plath had her stylistic shift into the Ariel style, into the Ariel voice, that what happened was, she said herself, she stopped doing a finger count of the rhythm of her poems and doing an ear count. She started actually saying her poems out loud and hearing them, and she took on the patterns of actual speech. And with the musicality and the precision of her very honed, very nuanced poetic education, she took all of those skills and she started almost, I see it, it's like she was almost in a kabuki play. She was putting on these masks in each poem. She would take on a mask, take on a persona, and actually completely embody that persona, so that you've still got the music, you've still got the incredibly beautifully internalized rhyme schemes, but you can read them and it actually sounds like speech. And in that way, I think she became incredibly readable, whereas before she was very difficult. She was structurally perfect, but there was no, the reader couldn't actually get into the emotion of the poems. They were very surface driven.
Okay, I mean, doesn't it seem pretty tame just to say viciousness in the kitchen and the smog of cooking and the smog of hell? We don't let anyone leave Fusion City before the break. You know, we do, I'm sorry, you cannot leave. We didn't know that we are reality TV, but we seal the doors when you come in. And then we have the break because you probably are coming up with a question for our Q&A right now as we speak, and those papers that are out there, they are for your questions. And my question continues to be, why is Plath not in the canon when it is clear to me that she is the greatest female poet in English of the 20th century?
Okay,
let's deal with that.
Yeah, what I was going to say, 2 things. First of all, I want to say which is similar to what you said, Kate, is that what I love about Plath is that to me, she embodies this paradox of talking about the unspeakable, speaking the unspeakable, saying really intense rage, passion, scary emotions with this very precise, structured, almost cold prose, and that combination is incredibly powerful. And for me, that's what I admire about her. Every word feels perfect. Feels there's nothing messy about her. She's writing about all these incredibly messy emotions, and she's not having a tantrum. There's there's this cold remove that is a slight cold remove that is incredible. You know, I think I have a clue about why she may not be in a canon, because the canon is centered around the academia, and when I was going on the job market, I was talking to professors, and I was talking about that one of my main I wrote a novel about that starts, the first sentence is a woman committing suicide, and I was really interested in that image, and my professors at the time said, don't say that in any interviews, because they felt that to talk to undergraduate women or graduate women about women and suicide was taboo. That it was,
Okay, I need to make a note now to my crew here. We will be doing a show on suicide, the pros and cons. And we'll do suicide side, the pros will be in big letters and the cons will be smaller. I've been thinking of the May show because we have a great show next time.
What's the downside?
Right. Our next show is great. It's Art and Madness, and we're going to have a real psychiatrist. I would like to have a real psychiatrist here all the time, every show. I want a real psychiatrist near me all the time.
You need it.
I'm here right now.
Okay, get ready. We'll be using you. Okay, and we have a real psychiatrist, and he's here. He's going to be on our next show, Art and Madness. And depending on our funding, how it goes on the funding, will determine a little bit about what our next shows will be. But what did we just come up with? I said I really like suicide. The pros and cons. But of course, I've just come back from a 6-week book tour that can only be looked at as Kate Braverman does. Are you ready? We will take one question, and then we're going to have our 10-minute break. Unseal the
You
doors.
might take 2 questions. Go.
Okay.
Go ahead, ask your question.
All right, go ahead.
That's my opinion. Move it. But I have panelists to give the illusion that this is a show where we have a real forum rather than a delusional monologue.
Okay.
What do you think?
What do I think? Yeah, I think that Plath is. I don't think I do that hierarchy thing, but I do think that she's a great 20th century poet, and yeah, I think she's great. And and that's that whole is she the great female poet or is she the great poet is a tricky thing, and it kind of depends if you're celebrating being female or if you're using it as a diminishment, like she's only a female. So.
But her sense that she inhabited not just this kitchen and not just the squalling infants that she dared comment negatively on.
Well,
by the way, we will soon have on my website available the Just Say No to Soccer sticker.
It was hilarious, but Kate was going to say something. Go
Yes.
Oh, well, in fact, one of the things I wanted to say about that the overall question, why is she not in the canon? A lot of it is because of how she was published after her death. And, you know, the fact is her suicide left her helpless to how she was going to be received. And how she was going to be manipulated as a writer, as an artist.
And something that does not happen when men.
Wait, could that be considered as a con for the suicide?
I like that. Okay, let's schedule. The May show is going to be suicide, pros and cons.
Well, you know, Plath she was a political commentator. She actually continued to do visual art. That she had incredibly hilarious, wonderful, cutting mosaics that she did. She cut stuff out of different magazines, and she would have, you know, huge missiles coming out of a man's pajama ad. And, you know, it was a lot of it was explicitly political. And
it has not been credit. She never. I noticed the politics in her. I mean, it's very clear to me, but I have not.
No, because she was a hysterical woman. For God's sake, she stuck her head in an oven. Who's going to listen to her? Yeah. That's one of the issues I have with the idea of the canon. That I think that the pressure to be as representational as possible means that writers of lesser quality have been elevated because they are representative of a particular culture, a particular realm of experience, rather than because of the quality of the literature. And
that really is like so politically incorrect, and it's so true. And I'm so glad I didn't have to be the one to be politically incorrect again. But I must tell you that the way affirmative action has worked pretty much for women is half of the pie is right away taken away by white men with bad haircuts, no questions asked. Forget it. So we've only got half of a pie to begin with, out of which 1/3 of our pie is designated to, you know, a representative sample of the other major voting groups, etc., and demographics that there are. So that's 1/3 of the pie. Then 1/3 of the pie goes to, you know, the other recognized people who need to be noticed and treated right. Which leaves 1/3 of the pie for everybody else.
No,
And I need to tell you,
1/2 of the pie.
yeah, no, 1/6 of the pie for everybody else. And I've had to say that as I've gone through my writing life, I found that all the girls like me and Julie, who are blonde and blue-eyed and like have doctors for fathers, always end up doing better in this line than me.
Haircut.
Since
That was good, though.
interactive TV, we are ready now to hear from you, or else we'll just keep talking.
I have a question.
We can't see you really.
Yeah, we
Shout it out.
it's all
Shout it out!
What was the significance of her horse, and why did she call the book? Why was the book called Ariel?
Should I take that one?
Yeah, you take that.
Well, Plath had a whole fantasy built around the horse Ariel. There really was a horse named Ariel in the last year of her life, actually after her husband left her for another woman in the summer of 1962. She decided that she was going to take riding lessons. She was living out in Devonshire in England. She was terrified of horses. The only other time she'd ridden a horse, she had gotten on a horse in Cambridge when she was a Fulbright scholar, and the horse had taken off and run through the streets, and she was literally, she fell off of it and was clinging to it upside down as it ran through the streets of Cambridge, and that was part of her whole mythology of herself, her self-mythologizing
Which,
trait.
of course, when men make myth of their lives, we lionize them for this. Burroughs, you know, shooting his wife.
Yeah, I really look up to him for that one.
You know, that's just a little collateral damage as men go through their lives, you know, killing women here, you know, abandoning children there, whatever. That's okay. That's okay. But the Plath in her biography, what I would like to try to do is think about what that says about how little progress women have made in terms of inhabiting the page when Plath is still not in the canon. When we talk about the patriarchy, in particular, I like to concentrate on literature as being the main part of the patriarchy that I would like to see dismantled. I would like to see it gone through every conceivable torture ever known since the start of time, plus new ones that we have the technology to engage in now. Think about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you know what?
question.
Hold on a minute. I want to go back to the idea of Ariel for a minute.
Okay.
Because what I think she did with the poem Ariel is so emblematic of the difference between the Plath, the biographical Plath and the poetic Plath. Because in fact she was terrified of this enormous, stupid old horse. This was like an old plodding horse. I actually met the women who ran the horse farm where she took lessons. For ancient old women now, and they said, oh, it was an old horse. It was like half Dartmoor pony and half, I don't know, something really slow and nice. And so she took these lessons, and then what she made of it was this incredible poem of personal power. that's what I think is really incredible and transformative about Sylvia Plath, was she could take the facts of her life and make of them a mythic stance, and actually find a way. She used her poetry to create a powerful person when she herself did not feel powerful. And then she made this poem that do you mind if I read it? Because I just think it's an amazing poem.
Ouija Bandit.
Okay, and the other thing you
We
need to
don't
know.
only not mind it, this is what reality TV is for, to have a sudden inspiration and improvisationally
That's right.
do it.
Okay.
And in fact, if we had our mic up, we'd just send you right up to the mic.
Well,
There are great recordings, and there is a recording that is in my drawer that belongs to Kate Moses of Plath doing Daddy, and that when she gets to the end of that one, Daddy, Daddy, you bastard, I'm through. It sounds as if she's not going to make it to the end of the poem, and I never got that sense of how close she is in that recording to death, that is like a posthumous recording. I have always felt that her poems were posthumous offerings, that she was writing as if posthumously, that she had merged with her persona to the point that they were inseparable. And I myself have existed in that state of being inseparable from my persona. So I know what it is to merge with the other. And you can hear it in those recordings. And perhaps there would be a way of putting them on the web or something to make them available.
Yeah. I wonder about that, because I was lucky enough, I was asked for the purposes of the Plath archive in general to do a study of the sound archive of Plath, because I think I may be the only person who's heard every known recording of her. And it's really amazing how the shift in tone from her early recordings, where they're very earnest.
They are so earnest. Those must
Yeah.
be the BBC recordings that perhaps the person who asked the Q&A was referring to, where it's almost as if she has a British accent and she sounds so studied and so senior faculty with the, faux British accent, that I listened to a little bit and said, never again, this is going to ruin my magical connection to the source.
The shift in her tone from before, while she is still married to and living with
I
Ted
cannot
Hughes,
believe
to
how
after.
often that irrelevant name has come up. Has anything not?
But it's not irrelevant. It was absolutely vital. What if you take an individual writer? What if you take an individual writer like James Joyce, for whom his marriage was absolutely...
Was that audience this? Excuse me.
What?
Do we have this? We were having interactive TV. Oh my God! It's a breakthrough.
I want you to finish your answer. The before and then the after.
Oh, wait a minute. Which before and after? Which one?
Like when she was reading them at first.
Oh, when she was...
And then...
Only known audience of all her audience.
We can count on the audience to do these kinds of things.
That's right.
Incredible.
Okay, so when we
cue cards now.
Hey.
So back to Plath's sound recording. So before Ted Hughes left her, before her marriage split up, she was a very proper girl. She was a proper married girl with a ponytail and bangs she cut at the kitchen sink, and she was earnest and precise, and she had this sort of kind of mock Bostonian British accent combo thing happening that was really weird. And then he left her, and she spent 3 months alone in this cold house in Devonshire with 2 little kids in diapers and no babysitter. Well, actually, she had a babysitter for 5 weeks. But during this time, she wrote the bulk of the aerial poems, and she knew what she'd done, and she was asked by the BBC to come into town, which is like a 5-hour train ride or something, to come into London and record. They asked her, do you have any new poems? And she happened to have, you know, like 30 new poems, including 2 she'd written that morning, including Ariel and Poppies, 2 of her most famous poems. She went into the BBC and she recorded, I can't remember if it was 13 or 15 poems, and that's where she recorded that Daddy. And that's where I have that image in my head of the kabuki actor who's putting on different masks and taking on different voices. Every single poem has a different voice and a different persona.
And I would like to point this out that I think we almost got to this when we talked about how much we liked wintering. If you're interested in like the biographical like landscape and emotional scape of where Plath was that last year, I highly recommend Kate Moses' book Wintering.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
I want to tell you something.